So we're going to be talking about linear programming. It's a combination of graphing linear inequalities. It's a combination of writing linear inequalities. And as far as our definitions go, we have constraints. Constraints are the inequalities that you create. So we'll discuss that within the problems, but they're going to be similar to the equations that you would set up for a system of equations when you're talking about cookies and apple pies that are sold, when you're talking about typically two different things in order to solve for both x and for y. So your objective function is going to be your profit equation. It's usually in the format, the profit of x and y, where you have some number times x plus some number times y. So it might be something like 3x plus 4y, depending on what they talk about as far as profit. It's usually going to be cost. We also want to talk about corner points, which are vertices where the lines intersect. So if we go over to our very important concepts, we have this graph here might be something that is represented when you start graphing your linear inequalities. We also have examples of constraints. It might be something like x is greater than 0 or y is greater than 0. Those are almost always there. Something else that I said, like x plus y is less than or equal to 12. 3x plus 2y is greater than or equal to 4. And then each of these constraints would be graphed on a coordinate plane. So when you graph them on a coordinate plane, you know that x is greater than 0 is a vertical line at 0. You know that y is greater than 0 has a horizontal line at 0. Again, you have different areas that you're going to shade. So you can always test the point 0, 0 to see if you're going to shade above or below. Oftentimes, you'll find that it is a shaded region that's known as a polygonal convex region that is kind of an overlap of all of your constraints put together. At each point where two of those lines, two of your constraints intersect, is considered to be a corner point or one of the vertices. Once you find all of your corner points, and it should be how many corner points you have or how many equations that you have. So once you find all of your corner points, you want to substitute in each point into your objective function or your profit function to see which one is your maximum or minimum value depending on what the question is asking. So steps to follow in a linear programming question. Our first step always when solving a word problem is to read the entire problem. You want to make sure that you read it top to bottom and then go back through and determine your important information. So step 2 is to choose the two options that you're going to be talking about. So if it mentions something like apple pies and pumpkin pies, that you're going to let x be apple pies and let y be pumpkin pies. You want to make sure that you state your variables. Define them, please. So step 3 is to write your constraints. As we said before, you're almost always going to have x is greater than 0 and y is greater than 0 because you're talking about real life situations and you're not going to have any negative apple pies or negative pumpkin pies. And you want to write your objective function, which we said usually involves the cost. Step 4 is to graph all of your lines on a coordinate plane and to see where they intersect. Step 5 is to find those corner points. So you find those by figuring out where those two lines will meet, where they intersect. 0, 0 is also almost always a corner point, so that should be one of the first things that you figure out. And step 6 is to summing the corner points into an objective function. So once you find all of your different corner points, you're going to substitute each of those points into your objective function to determine what the maximum profit or the minimum revenue or the minimum profit, minimum revenue is going to be. So the problem that we are going to do